Hi, I'm Elijah, and I could play Burning Rangers on the Sega Saturn for practically nothing. How did I do it? A misdemeanor.
Oh man, I just want to play Castlevania 64. I don't know why, but sure. But I don't have an N64, and it's not on the Switch Online service, so...
And that was how I lost my integrity.
Emulation, more specifically video game emulation, not to be confused with a football club in Martinique. If you're in the gaming space, you've undoubtedly heard this term being thrown around. But what does it mean?
Well, to begin with, it's a football club in Martinique.
So you have a video game console that plays specific games designed for it. This is what the guy at GameStop told me. But years go on and you have another console and you want to put that game on the new one. You could port it, which seems to be the most common thing to do, but what if you want to port something like Adventure on Atari? Essentially, you're going to have to remake it from the ground up, and then I asked the question, who the hell wants to essentially remake Adventure to work on a PS5? Also, who even wants to play Adventure these days? But to be fair, remaking Adventure on Atari sounds like a cool idea. In theory, but on paper, who the hell wants to remake Adventure? Porting a fairly recent game from like 3 to 4 years ago onto a newer console makes sense. 7 is probably done with witchcraft. Porting a really old game from a really old console? I mean, you can do that, but it's gonna take a lot of effort, and I did the math. It's not cheap. So, many people turn to emulation, which emulates a game system on a console so the game file thinks it's running on the console. So we're basically tricking this N64 file into thinking it's running on an N64. This may sound fairly new, but it's not. In the late 90s, PCs were becoming powerful enough to replicate behaviors from older models through software, and that left humanity to basically reverse engineer older consoles to see their insides. Mostly Nintendo consoles were studied a bunch from the NES, SNES, and Game Boy. People were able to create the first ever emulators for these systems. And because of this, as the years go on and the technology becomes better, we can literally play the NES library in a web browser. It also gives way to stuff like ROM hacks, fan translations, and homebrews. So emulation is the reason that many people can play Mother 1. And people hate it. Well, not Mother 1, because that's considered sin. So what's the big deal? Why do people have the old stink eye for emulation? Why people hate emulation? Number 1. This impedes my religion. This was the main argument I heard. Sometimes you hear someone play a certain game, but they use emulation on a PC with a mouse and keyboard. They say that ruins the experience. You're playing a game in a way that it wasn't intended, which makes sense. I kinda get it, but at the same time, I kinda don't. Like, I remember back for Smash Bros. For Wii U that they had this retro trial version of some NES games like Donkey Kong or the first Legend of Zelda, and I played them for a bit and I was like, why am I playing them? But when I got the NES Mini, I put a TV on a stand in a little corner in the basement, plugged it in, played Punch-Out, and it clicked. There was just something magical about doing all of this. Playing it with the original controller feels so good and harms future use for thumbs. Another time, when I made my Dreamcast Mini a few years ago, I used an off-brand wired Xbox 360 controller. It did the job, but later when I got an adapter for Dreamcast controllers and a Dreamcast controller, I now understand what it's like to play Sonic Adventure. I'm in hell! There's a certain magic to feel when you actually play the games on original systems or the way that they actually intended. Like, I could have emulated the GameCube, but there's a certain feeling you get playing with the system, setting it up, using the controller, something you really don't get when you're using a keyboard and mouse. But at the same time, I could have emulated the GameCube. Also, I didn't have to buy the GameCube because I had a backwards compatible Wii. It's all just done just for the love of the game. Why people don't like emulation number 2? Bullshit! Most emulators offer something that the originals don't. Save states. Save at any point you want in these games, and you can always go back to it. This is another argument I hear about from people that say that games have become far too easy. And to that I say, you really think the game designers knew what an adequate amount of saves in the game would be? Also, are we saying this like you haven't used Game Genie or cheat codes or used anything in Nintendo Power or strategy guides? Are you also saying this because you have some sort of pride that you get when you beat Castlevania without any saves or cheats, when really the game is like 30 minutes at most? Oh, but using save states, that takes out all the fun playing Rayman. Fun? What fun? Again, I understand, but at the same time, I also use save states, but it's more so to skip through a game's bullshit. Like, I can play the game, but it gets to a point. Like, do you know that one part of the game where like okay, I've been through all of this, I can get through it, it's just that this part alone is giving me so much problems, and then I just use save states for the rest of the game. But I think that argument comes to fruition if you're abusing it, which again, I am guilty of doing that, but it wouldn't be too long until I save myself in a corner where I can't get out of it and have to leave myself with the consequences. But you know what? Save states, it's entirely warranted. Now rewinding, you couldn't even pay me to stop using it. It's a good option too, but again, it's like save states. I get to a point, try again, and after multiple tries, enough is enough! What about these overlays? I mean, it looks nice. Oh, and don't forget the CRT filter. Oddly enough, it feels patronizing. And you are also given the option to put the games in widescreen like a person. I have to say that because a lot of people will not like me if I were to say like a dirty stinking creep. Then there's controller customizations. Finally, adding a solution to what if I don't want to hit the X button. You can map the controller all you want to make the gameplay to your liking. Sometimes it is a nightmare if you were to play something like Mario World with a GameCube controller. But it could make the gameplay a lot easier when you could literally just tailor the controllers to your liking. Why people don't like emulation number 3. Where am I? And now here comes another philosophical question from yours truly. Are you really playing the same game? What I mean by this is that most emulators are also known to take out some of those bugs and glitches that are present in some old games. Sonic Jam did this by taking 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles and really just remake the games from the ground up, taking down all of the slowdowns and all of the other problems in the games. I mean, slowdowns are abysmal and have horrible frame rate problems, but at the same time, I mean, they're kind of part of the game, which kind of takes out what makes it unique. You also have games in a 4:3 ratio that are made widescreen with texture packs and 4K resolution. Like in my opinion, I think that there's something weird about seeing a Super Nintendo game in widescreen, but is it a problem if other people don't have a problem with it? But what about games that only released in one region and get a fan translation, or ROM hacks that make a game easier or remove any annoying quirks or just make it quirkier? Like, I know I said play games however you want it, but when you sit back and think about it, there are so many questions left unanswered that even though it's supposed to be not that deep, it kind of is deep. However, I think after this reason, we kind of also understand why some people don't like emulation that much. Number 4. The judicial system. Okay, so many times when games are emulated, they're done by the companies that own the IP. The Virtual Console, Sega Mega Collection, Namco Museum, the mini consoles, Virtual Boy on Nintendo Switch Online. But remember, most emulation happens over on this thing. Most of the official ways to replay these old games don't really have most of the mentioned customization. You'd be lucky at least to get all of them, but emulation on a PC have all the customizations and are leagues further in replicating and perfecting consoles from the 6th generation. But then comes the problem. See, emulation is still software mimicking old consoles, which is pretty much useless unless you have games, and last time I checked a PC, they don't have a cartridge or disc slot anymore. And you could buy a third-party cartridge or disc reader, but at the same time, who's spending time and money doing all of that? Also, what if you don't have money to do all of that? Well, many people turn to some forbidden areas on the internet. Unless you're new to it, this is the illegal part of emulators. Piracy! People dump ROMs of old games on the internet nowadays. You want to play a game but you don't know where to find it? There's probably a ROM for it on the internet. But that's more so the extent of the legality of emulators at times. They're fine, not a lot of companies are going to lose sleep over that. People downloading ROMs on the internet? That's a big no. Which I get, but at the same time it doesn't make sense. Most of the ROMs online are old games that aren't in print anymore. Resellers have the old games. Sega doesn't get a cut of somebody's profit when they're reselling Nights into Dreams on the Sega Saturn, and when companies do offer their old games on consoles, half the time it's through via subscription services, and you can't really buy the games you actually want, or in a compilation of other games you probably don't even care about, which both are fine, they have their merit, but I doubt people in this digital heavy age like it where companies go, oh, you want this copy of our product? Well, think again, chump, kiss my ring.
Emulation on a PC tends to be a lot better, but at the same time, it kind of doesn't. It can be a genuine nightmare in order to get these games to run smoothly on a PC. Last time I tried emulation, I tried to play Sonic Unleashed, and all I just ended up doing was buying a PS3. The amount of work that goes into making sure that these stuff works shows that emulation is really a daunting task. And at the end of the day, I'd rather wait for the IP owners to actually do it for myself, because It's not like I can't do it. I can. I'm just too lazy to.
Even now where we get almost all game consoles that we've never gotten the chance to play with, like the Virtual Boy, in that same breath, there are some that we don't even get to see. And I really do understand why we don't really see stuff like the Sega Saturn. I mean, the Saturn's complex hardware, I understand why we don't really see much re-releases of those games. But at the same time, if it weren't for fans working on emulation of the game and preserving the ROMs of these things on the internet, I probably wouldn't be here talking about it. Emulation also helps preserve game history, and the stance behind it has been soured by companies suppressing fans who don't even let games fade into obscurity, and also purists who see it as immoral. Emulation, I get it, it's convenient. Don't need to worry about a console or game, you can add customizations. There's still some hassle that comes with it, also it allows them to stick up to the man. But where I am in my life now, I more or less use emulation as a necessity for when I need it. Emulation, I get it, companies tend to try and price you out and make ludicrous bank off of old IPs, or they'll offer you a Pokemon game for 20 bucks. And again, I know they do scummy shit on the side, but if they have a compromise that's beneficial for both parties.
Hi, I'm Scum. At the end of the day, emulation and physical media have the same relationship I do with Netflix and DVDs. Emulation is basically the Netflix for me when I want to pick a game out to play. Physical media, on the other hand, it's me picking out a movie at the library. If I get all 5 in a row, I get a free ice cream.